for T.J. Hockenson.
Long count, gets the snap. He's back. Fires for the end zone. Touchdown, Claypool! Wow! Oh, little stop route into some zone coverage. What a great job.
Run back Jeff Wilson Jr. Kittle comes forward, saw sweep to Wilson.
Cut back run, 20, 10, 5, touchdown! San Francisco!
The Playbook with Fensty and Ronis is sponsored by Jock Market.
The Playbook is live here on Bettor Sports Network. I don't think it's been that busy of a day in the world of sports. My name is Justin Fensterman, along with Adam Ronis for the next couple of hours here. We're talking a lot of fallout when it comes to this crazy 10-trade day in the NFL. Rona, if I had more hair on my head, I might have lost it. But what's going on with you? What a day.
Yeah, I mean, a lot more activity than usual, but not really that significant from a fantasy perspective.
No, well, let's talk about that. You heard some of the calls here, Lions, Steelers, and 49ers radio networks on the call, man. Let's just start it up here since you don't think that a trade stands out. Where do we begin, man? You want to begin with Hockenson, an interdivision trade. We've talked about this before, whether or not teams would want to trade certain pieces in the division, as we now have T.J. Hockenson going to the Minnesota Vikings, and the report comes out about Irv Smith, a high ankle sprain that's going to sideline him from 8 to 10 weeks, according to Adam Schefter. Hockenson, though, now on the Vikings. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it was definitely surprising you didn't hear any rumors of that. I mean, for Hockenson, it's kind of lateral, because he's not going to get as much volume, but maybe there's more opportunities to score touchdowns because he's in a better offense, but he's still not going to be a primary target on this team. And Irv Smith obviously is someone you can drop right now in redraft leagues because you won't see him back. And that's probably part of the reason why they made this deal. And, you know, they're first place and in control, and they probably want to add another piece. So, I mean, it's kind of lateral. I mean, you can't move Hockenson that far down because when you start to look at the tight end landscape, you know, how far can you move him down? So it's not really that significant. I mean, if anything, maybe he takes a slight hit, but I'd probably say it's kind of lateral because he might score more touchdowns, but he's probably not going to catch as many passes.
Can this do anything for anybody else in Detroit? Some of the pass catchers, do you think it opens up any more targets for any of those receivers at all? I know that they've been dealing, the Detroit Lions, with health issues throughout the year, now starting to get healthier, although DJ Chark has been out. You think of it from that side, or doesn't it really matter at all?
I mean, I'm on Ross St. Brown and Josh Reynolds. That's really it. I mean, Swift when he's healthy, although the comments that we heard from Campbell today weren't really positive when he said, well, I probably gave Swift too many touches, and it's not like he got that many. So he clearly is still not 100%, which is very concerning, dealing with the shoulder and the ankle.
Yeah, it helps me out, though, in some of my leagues where I have Jamal Williams. If they're going to keep him very involved here, we're going to have to see how his health goes throughout the next number of weeks here, see if he's fully recovered. We've seen it a few times. Maybe players coming back a little bit earlier, getting too big of or at least a normal size workload when they're not ready for it then. So we've seen it a couple of times here. We talked about this situation in Pittsburgh throughout the year, and that's Chase Claypool and George Pickens being very similar of wide receivers, deep threats, but now they don't have to worry about that anymore, as now the Chicago Bears are going to have Claypool services here. So now the Bears, we were talking about Justin Fields before. Now he's got not only the two running backs that he's going to be working with here. We talked about the carry distribution should even out with Montgomery and Herbert, but now he has Mooney and he now has Chase Claypool. Very interesting landing spot.
Yeah, but again, another offense that's just not going to pass much. So, I mean, I don't see him getting huge volume here. I mean, I think it's clear the way the Bears want to play. Now, if they're playing from behind, then, you know, you might have to pass a little bit more. I mean, it helps Justin Fields, and I already think his value was on the way up anyway, so he gets another target. But Claypool still, there's just not going to be a lot of volume in this offense. They don't want to pass a lot. So it helps him leaving Pittsburgh, but it's not like, oh, yeah, he's phenomenal now. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I was wondering too, and I saw some of the analysts that are in our space on Twitter saying, "Oh, he could be the prioritized receiver." I just don't know, and I'm trying to figure out how that would be. But like you said, in this offense, they're going to be a lot of running there. Even Justin Fields, a lot of his success lately has been his own mobility, and that's not going to change much. But it's still good seeing him there, considering we've been talking about whether or not we can believe in this guy, stream this guy. We're getting another weapon definitely helps with that. Then the Dolphins making some moves here, getting Bradley Chubb, and then also trading for Jeff Wilson. They sent Chase Edmonds to Denver there. So now the Royal Rumble of running backs in Denver just added another participant there. But talking about it on the Miami side first here, as someone who has 3 shares of Raheem Mostert, and now also being that McDaniel very familiar with 49ers running backs here, like Wilson, who he just acquired, makes me wonder if it was more because we were talking about Miami as potential for landing a running back for insurance, or whether or not they're going to take a little bit off of Mostert here. So as a Mostert investor, I'm trying to figure out whether or not maybe there's going to be a carry split, or is this just an insurance policy? My gut is telling me Jeff Wilson's an insurance policy.
I don't know. I think they can mix him in. He knows this system well, obviously coming from San Francisco, similar. So Mostert, I think also they're worried about his health as an older back and his guys who have problems staying healthy. So I think actually he might be the biggest winner here of this trade deadline. So he was a guy that people were cutting last week with McCaffrey in San Francisco, and now I think you could pick him back up. So I do think this is good for Wilson.
Yeah, absolutely. Not good for me if I have Mostert then, if that's what you're thinking that can happen there. I could use every bit of help I could get from this guy before he theoretically gets injured. But we'll have to wait and see on how the carries are divvied up in that regard. And then what do you think about Chase Edmonds going to Denver? I mean, now you've got there what? You've got Melvin Gordon. You've got Latavius Murray. You've got Edmonds there as well. I know Mike Boone's been hurt. So it's one of those things, man, where do you think this does anything for the Denver backfield, or is Edmonds just another guy in this mess of a team?
He could become a pass catching back. So I don't think it's good for Gordon or Murray. They haven't looked great anyway. It's been a pretty bad backfield. So I think this just makes it worse because I could see Edmonds being the pass catching back. I know he has not been great this year, but that could be his role in this offense. So I don't think it's good for anyone in Denver.
Yes, and now Denver, which look, Roan, shocker here, and this might be breaking news to you, although I'm sure you know, the Broncos will not be on prime time this week. How pumped are you about that?
I'm by.
That's exactly why. Along with 5 other teams here, the Browns, the Cowboys, the Giants, Steelers, and 49ers in there as well. And when it comes to everything with DFS, we're going to actually bring on John Impemba. You can catch him every Sunday, 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern here on BSN in the Game Day Playbook edition. He normally hosts that with Andrew Cooper. James Grande's been involved. So Impemba actually also writes our quarterback coach for DFS on fantasyalarm.com. So we're not only going to talk about the trades because he's been writing a bunch of analysis regarding these trades for the website, but we're also going to talk about quarterbacks, especially with 6 teams on bye that we can rely on here, at least from a streaming standpoint, that could be out there on your waiver wire. Speaking of waivers, we're going to talk waivers a little bit later on, as well as stock of fantasy players. I've got the stock watch video up at fantasyalarm.com, dropped yesterday, and we're going to talk about some of the players, as we always do, that are involved trending up, trending down. And then NBA, we're going to not only talk about the NBA for tonight, but we got to talk about as well, Roan, and we'll get back to these NFL trades. But interesting, a trade that I thought may happen in the NBA, Ime Udoka, I thought maybe there'd be some compensation for him, but it's looking like after the Brooklyn Nets fire Steve Nash, now within the next couple of days, Ime Udoka, the Celtics are going to let him walk. He's suspended for the year. They're going to let him walk so he can be the head coach of this mess of an organization.
Yeah, and apparently they mutually parted ways, and that might be true because I would think Nash would want out of that situation. Why would you want to stay there with everything that's going on? So,
It's awful.
Yeah,
It's awful.
Well, Yeah,
It's
so
terrible, man.
and
Kenny
then
Atkinson should have never lost that job. He was a good coach for that team. And then the players there at the time, whether it was the combination of Durant, Irving, and Harden, whether it was before that, it was, I think before that, Harden was even there. He should never have lost that job. And this is the problem when you put the players in too much control of the situation. Remember when David Blatt got fired? The team was in first place, but LeBron didn't like him. And then he was fired. I believe he just won the champion, or he didn't win the championship with the team. I believe he was fired mid-season, and then they won the title. But that's what happens, Roan, when the players control the managerial and the operations from that standpoint here. Because then you get a situation like Steve Nash. Yeah, the guy won MVPs, but he can't coach worth a lick, and he had no control over that team.
Yeah, and then this Udoka thing is kind of weird because now the Celtics are letting him go to a divisional rival and asking for no compensation. Doesn't that present a red flag as well?
Absolutely, it does. I'm shocked there wasn't a draft pick sent back or anything like that. But they clearly had no, clearly, at least from what we're reading, had no future bringing him back or anything like that, which I thought was a little bit questionable in itself. The guy is very much liked by the team that he coached all the way to the finals last year. So
although I'm just saying this. So Sean Marks has said he is absolutely not settled on Udoka or any other replacement for Nash.
Wow.
That was what he just said a few minutes ago. So
wow, I saw Quinn Snyder in that mix before. So that's interesting there. A little bit of back and forth. Is there a little bit of inconsistency going on in the Nets organization right now? Because from the reports that we got from our favorite Shams, from Woj, this seemed like a done deal already.
Who knows, man? Maybe it is, and I don't know.
Yes, you don't know. I don't freaking know. I mean, it's unbelievable there. But yeah, I mean, regardless, they still have a long way to go before they figure things out. They need some of their shooters back, and they need to do something called play defense. Back to the NFL, though. We're going to be going in and out, but when it comes to the NFL and the NBA, a lot of NFL, so don't you worry. We're also, by the way, taking your comments in the comments section. Let's chat there. And Essen saying Denver now the officially worst team for fantasy this season. Well, as someone, Essen, that has had players like Chase Edmonds on a team, who's now a member of the Broncos, and then you have other players like Russell Wilson, a couple of shares of him. Very frustrating. The running back injuries have also made it very frustrating as someone who has Javonte Williams, man. When you think of a team who's the worst for fantasy players, maybe the most frustrating for fantasy players, Denver has to be up there. Any other teams come to mind instantly when you're thinking of teams that are most frustrating for the fantasy player?
I mean, half them in the NFL.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, Denver definitely one of those teams. It's wild. Another trade that went down. Billy Hayes commenting about it. Nyheim Hines at the buzzer. This was right at the buzzer pretty much. Sent to Buffalo. And you think back a few weeks ago and you thought, could Buffalo land a McCaffrey or someone else? Well, they land pass catching Nyheim Hines, sending Zach Moss and a pick back. That's very interesting. The Bills just adding another piece to help Josh Allen out right there with Nyheim Hines. So I don't think those with Singletary necessarily have to worry, but those receptions are going to go to Hines' way. Just another piece of depth for the Buffalo Bills as they try to make that Super Bowl run.
It's not good if you have Singletary because he's going to catch fewer passes. I mean, the Bills have been intent on adding a pass-catching running back. They thought they had McKissick signed, and that didn't go through. And if you added James Cook, that's a problem because they clearly don't really trust him at this point. And Hines is signed for a few years. So they clearly feel he's a big upgrade. So the problem is they don't throw to the running backs that much to begin with. So it's not great for Hines either. Not that, I mean, I guess some people were using him, but a week like this week where you expect him to be up on the Jets, I mean, that could diminish his role. So, but I do think Deion Jackson becomes relevant again in Indianapolis. And we did see Jonathan Taylor hurt his ankle this past week. Really haven't heard anything yet, but I think that is a guy that would certainly see a big boost if Taylor is out and is second now behind Taylor. And we already saw Deion Jackson have a big game this year.
10 receptions, right?
Yeah, I think it was 10.
And then I believe he had 4 the week before. He went 4 for 4 and then 10 for 10 in the couple of weeks that we saw him there. So that definitely presents opportunity. Waivers are going to be very interesting, Roan. Very interesting this week. I mean, just with some of the players out there for stash purposes. I haven't been able to really scrounge the waiver wire over the last couple of weeks to find others to stash. I'm down to do that. I'm down. Jeff Wilson, he's going to be out there. That's someone that I want to put an investment in to stash.
I don't know if he's out there in every league, though. I know I didn't see him in many leagues.
He's out there in casual leagues. Trust and just on that. He's not going to be out there in competitive leagues. Casual leagues, he's out there.
All right, but you see, I think what you're missing, though, this is not a great week to stash. There's 6 teams on bye. If you go look at some of the projected scores this week, they're very low. So I know I have teams with 4 to 5 players on bye. How are you going to stash someone when you have to replace 3 players in your starting lineup?
Yeah, I mean, look, team by team, not necessarily like that, but you're right. It is a big bye week, but it's team by team, man. That's the thing. I mean, I bet you I could go look through my 10 teams and quickly find a team that doesn't have players on bye.
Good luck finding. Good luck.
Thank you. I've got my own problems with that because I got players who are hurt. That's the thing. I could tell you
if you have 5 or 6 bench spots, it's going to be very difficult to stash anyone this week. And if somehow you have no players on bye, you're very lucky.
Yeah, I doubt that's the case. But 1 or 2 is different than 4 or 5, I'd say. You have multiple teams with 4 or 5 players on bye?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Dang. You'll still figure it out, though. You will. Is that how you holding up in the Sirius XM host league with players on bye this week?
I lost by 0.9 last night.
I know that. But you're in stat correction territory. And you did play John and Pemba and stuff like that. So it's interesting that we're having him on next as well. What about this week? You got some buys this week?
I have injury issues this week.
I hear you on that. I hear you on that. By the way, for those that have friends out there and you want fantasy content, you want wagering content, you can download the free Bettor Sports Network app. I mean, you can just join our show by putting your comments in the comments section. That's why we have it. Smash the fun button as well. You can call in. We talked to Essen before. You can chat, and you can even win contests. I'm going to tell you about an opportunity when Rick Kamla from Bettor Sports Live joins us a little bit later on to talk about this coaching fiasco we have now between the Nets and the Celtics. And we're going to talk about just in general the season that was, or is rather, in just a couple of weeks there. Very busy in the Fantasy Alarm Discord, answering those with season-long fantasy basketball questions. We don't talk a lot about that, but we will talk about the DFS options for this 4-game slate tonight. I got some value plays with the value video that's currently up on fantasyalarm.com, and we'll talk a few props as well. So with that, those are some of the trades that have happened. Some of the players that didn't get dealt. Jerry Jeudy linked to the Giants. That didn't happen. Apparently, there was a Brandon Cooks trade, possibly to the Cowboys, that was very close to getting done, but then the communication fell at the buzzer of the deadline right there, Roan. So your Cowboys almost landing Brandon Cooks to their receiving corps.
I'm sure he wanted to be there because it looked like he wanted to be traded and wasn't practicing today. What they said is a personal day, and he clearly is not happy with what he tweeted out. So he tweeted out about an hour ago, "Don't take a man's kindness for granted. Covered for the lies for too long. Those days are done. Cross the line with playing with my career. Bow and arrow symbol." So
what does that even mean? I saw that. That means, what does that mean?
He's clearly not happy with the Texans.
Playing with my career.
They probably told him he was going to be traded, and they didn't trade him. He probably wanted out.
Yeah, very interesting there. You shocked the Packers didn't do anything?
No, this is what they do every single year. They never draft a receiver. They never do anything. Like, I know a lot of people like to crap on Aaron Rodgers, and I get it, but they never do anything to help this guy. Never. I mean, from the draft when they had Jordan Love and then A.J. Dillon in the first couple rounds, and then they never took a receiver in any of the drafts until this year, and then you get Watson and Dobbs. I mean, they just never do anything to upgrade this offense, and you're seeing the fallout of it now.
Yeah, I'm kind of pissed about Watson because I loved him back in the draft time. But Then he's been a little bit banged up. And then I believe in
preseason. He's banged up all the time. He's banged up in the preseason. He's had a hamstring, a concussion.
And then in the preseason, he dropped a wide open touchdown too, which you and I the next day were like, uh-oh, that could be it for him, knowing Aaron Rodgers' patience at this time. But yeah, I have a very deep bench where I could keep the rookies for a final round pick if you keep them on your roster all year long. And I'm trying my damn best to be patient with Christian Watson. Patience. That's something that's very, very difficult for a fantasy player, but sometimes you just got to be patient, especially those young in their fantasy basketball leagues. It's only been a couple of weeks. Let's talk with someone who loves basketball, loves football, loves all sports. It's John Impemba from fantasyalarm.com. I don't think Impemba has had a busy enough day from the content side of things. Let's talk about all these NFL trades, some of these offensive players on the move. And maybe we'll even get into, because John is a Celtics fan, and how he feels about this coaching situation, bizarre, in the NBA. He's Adam Ronis. I'm Justin Fensterman. This is The Playbook with Fensty and Ronis, powered by FantasyAlarm.com, sponsored by Jock Market here on Bettor Sports Network.
The Playbook with Fensty and Ronis is sponsored by Jock Market.
On Call with Dr. Roto, Tuesdays and Fridays at 10 p.m. Eastern on Bettor Sports Network.
Gino's going to run a quarterback draw, and he's going to walk in. Touchdown, Seahawks!
What's interesting about Geno Smith this year, he has not gotten to where he has been success-wise this year in bulk. He's not throwing 44 times a game. He's not going 32 for 45 for 300 yards. Guy barely throws more than 30 times. The guy barely throws more than 30 times. What he has been doing is he's been efficient, and he's been throwing the ball down the field. So maybe he's going 20 for 27 for 210 yards. That means he's throwing the ball down the field. He's not nickel and diming it. He's not going 2 yards here, 2 yards there. He's throwing the ball down the field. When you have Tyler Lockett, when you have DK Metcalf, when you have Marquise Goodwin, when you have D. Eskridge, you have guys with speed that you could take chances down the field. And it's been paying off. It's been paying off big time. I'm excited to see that.
The Playbook with Fensty and Ronis, presented by FantasyAlarm.com. Weekdays at 5 Eastern.
Hurts takes the snap. He's back. He lets it fly. He is going deep. And it is caught for a touchdown. A.J. Brown.
Jalen Hurts, man, I'm so glad I have a share of this guy. He's been great. The Eagles have been excellent this year, man. And ultimately, just getting A.J. Brown just shows how much having someone like A.J. Brown can really help the development of a quarterback who otherwise doesn't have that kind of strong weapon in A.J. Brown.
Yeah, and the only issue with the Eagles right now is they don't do anything in the second half because they're up so big, and they could put up even better fantasy numbers, but there just hasn't been a lot of competition for them. We knew Hurts was going to have a great year because the ability to run. Adding A.J. Brown was huge. And look, from week to week, you're not going to get all these guys to produce, Miles Sanders. With these guys, I think you just got to play them every week. And you understand there's going to be a week where Brown, Goddard, Smith, Sanders, one of them's probably not going to come through on a given week. And there's really not much you can do with that. We've seen it. A.J. Brown against the Cardinals had 3 for 32. Now it's going to happen. Week 2, he had 5 for 69. So there are going to be games where he just doesn't have huge numbers. And same thing with Smith. We've seen a couple of down games from Smith. But those guys, because of this offense and how good they are and how they can put up 30, you just got to keep them in your lineup every single week.
Call, chat, enter contests in real time. It's Sports Talk 3.0 with Bettor Sports Network. The Playbook with Fensty and Ronis is sponsored by Jock Market. Make real money every hour, every minute, every second of every game.
Justin Fensterman, Adam Ronis back with you here on The Playbook on Bettor Sports Network. Let's talk a little bit more in depth about not only these NFL trades that have gone on a busy deadline day, 10 trades in total, but we'll also talk about QB streamers too, because the author of the QB coach for every week when it comes to DFS, especially on FantasyAlarm.com, is our first guest of the day. It's John Impemba, who you can hang with along with Andrew Cooper for the Game Day Playbook, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern every Sunday here on BSN. J.I., what's going on? I don't think you've done enough work today.
It's been a busy day today there, Fensty and Ronis. That is for sure. I started off with some NBA content. I thought maybe we would get like a trade or two today. We got 10. We got 10 is a high, all-time high of trades for the NFL on a deadline day. Honestly, I hope that this is a cue to start doing this more often during the season. We love trade deadline days in the NBA and the NHL, in the MLB. So why not get it rocking during the NFL season as well?
Looking at some of those trades, TJ Hawkinson, one of the big names. What do you think about his landing spot, and what does it do for his fantasy value?
Yeah, this one's kind of an interesting one because he obviously goes from a team in Detroit that's always trailing. They had a high volume of pass attempts. They were an offense that put up a lot of points this year. And on the surface, you might look at it in PPR leagues, you say, oh man, TJ Hawkinson's tight end 4. Well, all of that's because of that week 4 matchup against Seattle where he went for like 38 fantasy points. For the most part, he hasn't really been that great of a tight end for fantasy. Now he's going to a team that has a better quarterback. They have a better offense. But they also have a true stud number 1 wide receiver there in Justin Jefferson. When they get into the red zone, you know how often they're targeting Adam Thielen or they're using Dalvin Cook. So it really feels like there's going to be a clampdown with Hawkinson potentially with his value. The one thing I do like a little bit here is that, one, he's the surefire number 1 tight end in that offense. Irv Smith's out for 10 weeks, 8 to 10 weeks. With that ankle injury, I was a little bit worried that maybe it was going to be a 4-week thing, and then we'd have to worry about a timeshare. That's not going to be the case. Hawk's going to be that tight end there for them going forward. I also like the fact that they use Irv Smith a lot in the slot. Now, Hawkinson didn't play in the slot at all, really, for the Lions. He had 9% of his snaps he lined up in the slot. They used Irv Smith in the slot like 20+% of the time that he was out there. So I do like that they're probably going to move Hawkinson into the slot there in some of their formations. They also have Irv Smith block on like 50% of the snaps he's on the field for. TJ Hawkinson is not a run blocker. He ran an 83% route participation when he was on the field. He played 85% of the offensive snaps for Detroit, where Irv Smith was around 50% of the offensive snaps. I got a feeling they may utilize Hawkinson a bit more than they were utilizing Irv Smith. So from that standpoint, maybe there's a potential for more volume and a better offense, more scoring opportunities and a better offense. So, do I think this is going to be a huge improvement for him? I don't. But I think maybe we'll get a little bit more consistency out of him in this offense than we saw with Detroit, where, that offense just wasn't very good. He wasn't getting a ton of targets. He wasn't really getting many catches either.
Miami very busy on this deadline day here, getting rid of, in one hand, besides getting Bradley Chubb, getting rid of Chase Edmonds, sending him off to Denver, but then acquiring Jeff Wilson. Coach McDaniel, very familiar with both Mostert and Jeff Wilson here. And as someone who has a few shares of Mostert, was thinking at first, little insurance policy is Wilson. But what do you think? Do you think that this is still going to be Mostert's backfield, or are we going to see Jeff Wilson involved in getting consistent carries?
My worry is red zone here. I think red zone work could go to Jeff Wilson in this situation. I think Mostert will still be the lead back, and I think he'll be the guy that's out there catching footballs as well. Wilson didn't really profile as a pass catching back when he was at San Francisco. Edmonds certainly had that profile. They move off of Edmonds and need somebody that can play third downs. I think Mostert could fill that role. I still think he's going to be the lead back there, but if you're talking about power running, I think Wilson's going to be sort of that guy for them. So if they're in short yardage, or if they could get into goal line situations, they may run Wilson out there over Mostert. And there's some of my concern there. I definitely think it's an insurance policy for them as well. We know the injury history there with Raheem Mostert. Cross your fingers, knock on wood, he's been healthy to this point. But if he goes down, you got to think McDaniel feels a lot better knowing that their backup running back is now Jeff Wilson than it was Chase Edmonds before. So new life potentially for Wilson in fantasy. We'll see how quickly he kind of gets acclimated and put into this role with Miami. And new life for Chase Edmonds, right? He goes down to a backfield where I imagine he's going to play over Mike Boone, and then Latavius Murray and Melvin Gordon have not looked great. You can see Chase Edmonds actually out there as the lead back, much in the way that we saw him utilized in Arizona last year. And then when it comes into those goal lines or short yardage situations, you see a Latavius Murray, you see a Melvin Gordon out there in those sets. But, between the 20s, you might see Chase Edmonds out there for 60% of the snaps like he was used last year. I think that's a pretty great value for him, assuming that's how they could consider using him in that offense.
Chase Claypool goes to Chicago. What does this do for his fantasy value?
Yeah, I know. I know some people are obviously down with the move of him going to Chicago, but I think sneakily the Fields and Bears offense has gotten a little bit better progressively. Fields has thrown the ball 20 or more times in 5 straight games, which doesn't seem like a lot, but considering where he was to start the year to what he's doing now, I think that's a benefit. He's also upped his completion percentage over the last 4 weeks. He has a 65% completion percentage. He has 5 touchdowns to just 2 interceptions. The yardage volume isn't there, but this is what people need to understand. The situation has changed now for the Bears offense. They went from Darnell Mooney as their number 1 wide receiver, and then Equanimeous St. Brown, N'Keal Harry, Velus Jones, Cole. Like, that was the number 2 options for him to throw the football to in that offense. Now they add Chase Claypool, a legitimate horse wide receiver, in my opinion. He is 6'4". He's like 240 pounds. He ran a low 4.40. Darnell Mooney's out there with 4.3 speed. Those are 2 guys that can stretch the field. Claypool can get the tough catches. He's a big physical receiver. And much in the way that I talked about Jalen Hurts this past offseason, where everybody looked at Hurts like, oh, he can't throw the football. Look at his completion percentages. I'm like, yeah, but he's thrown to Jalen Reagor and, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. Like, get him a good wide receiver, see what happens. I'm not saying that Fields is going to be a top 5 quarterback the rest of the way, but you just gave him a pretty legitimate wide receiver too, maybe even their number 1 wide receiver now in that offense to pair with Darnell Mooney. And it's just a better pass catching option for them. He can get more separation. He can make the more physical catches. So we'll see if that offensive line can give Fields any more time back there. I do think this is actually a pretty big bonus there for Fields, for Chicago. And I think Claypool, I don't think he's going to regress at all. I mean, the Pittsburgh Steelers in that offense, they weren't any great shakes either. So, I'm actually kind of hopeful for this move here.
John, let's stay with that for a second, because we talk about QBs that we can trust for a 1-week stream, maybe a 2-week stream, but we've got 6 teams on bye. We have inconsistent quarterback play all over. Is this the time where maybe if we don't have a reliable quarterback on our fantasy teams, we should be putting a little bit more of an investment into getting Justin Fields? If he is on waivers, do you think that he's someone that does, and I know that you were mentioning, whether top 5, but do you think that he does have long-term appeal and is not as much of a Band-Aid?
I like more so that, again, I think he's been better throwing the football lately. Has it been great? No. There's certainly a lot of work still to be done. But his mobility is kind of making up for what he lacks a little bit throwing the football. And again, just adding another really good wide receiver to his offense, I feel like can only benefit him. Now, how competent are the coaches? Are they going to be able to drop a game plan to get Claypool open or more involved or change their schemes a little bit? But again, I feel a lot better knowing that Darnell Mooney and Chase Claypool are out there for Fields to throw the football to, along with Cole Kmet, than N'Keal Harry and Equanimeous St. Brown running out there. No knock on them. N'Keal Harry had a touchdown last week, but again, just skill set level, the talent is so much greater with Claypool on the upside. So, yeah, if he's on your waivers, I would definitely take a flyer on him because there's a lot of middling quarterbacks here. And just the mobility that Fields adds when they get in the red zone, rushing touchdowns count more than passing touchdowns in fantasy for the most part. So, you can add that to your ledger there as well. Again, Jalen Hurts last year, not making that one-to-one comparison, but Jalen Hurts last year was not a good passer. But all of his fantasy value came from him running the football. He had 10 touchdowns rushing at like 600-700 yards. Fields could be that guy and now has a more capable pass catcher for him as well. So I'm definitely worth taking the flyer on him.
You trust Marcus Mariota as a streamer this week against the Chargers after his performance last week?
No, because I think that was pretty fluky. That game was wild, right? It started off super slow. Excuse me. He threw an interception pretty much right away in that game. And we hadn't seen the Falcons really open up their offense. And then all of a sudden, they let him throw. And you see guys like Kyle Pitts and them making plays. But I feel like Arthur Smith's going to he can't help himself but fall back into his old style of coaching. Plus, they're facing a Chargers team where, throwing the football against them hasn't been great. They do have a good pass rush, but they're terrible against the run. Chargers are one of the worst run defenses in football. They could get Cordell Patterson back this week. We've seen Tyler Algier and Caleb Huntley actually handle the ball pretty well when asked to carry the workload. If it push comes to shove here, I feel like you're going to see the Falcons go back to running the football this week. So, no, I'm not really big into Mariota, but, I would like to see them throw the football more. They invested in London and Kyle Pitts. Like, why not open it up? But I just don't feel like that's something we can trust Arthur Smith to do on a week-to-week basis.
Opening it up, would just make absolute sense. And as someone that has Drake London, it has been dreadful. I wasn't saying that after the first couple of weeks, but since it has been dreadful having this guy.
Yeah.
Talking with John Impemba, who's not dreadful. Awesome having John Impemba on the playbook here, and you can catch all his work, fantasyalarm.com. He's been covering all these trades on a very busy day. He also does coverage for basketball as well. Big prize picks guy for John Impemba here, and also the author of the QB Coach for our DFS coverage on fantasyalarm.com as well. Talking another quarterback with maybe a little stream potential. How do you feel about what you've seen from Andy Dalton and for this upcoming matchup he has against Baltimore if the Saints continue to roll with him, which I'm guessing they will?
Yeah, I don't see why they would make the change at this point. I mean, if Jameis Winston was healthy and they decided to go with Andy Dalton, then I don't see why they would just all of a sudden go back to Winston here. Again, they played well last week. They benefited from the Raiders having one of the worst games I think I've seen a team play. They didn't cross the 50-yard line last week, the Las Vegas Raiders. So tough to win football games when you can't get on your side of the field. But yeah, listen, Andy Dalton does a couple of things well. You know, he's not necessarily taking those big shots downfield, which Jameis Winston sometimes gets in trouble with. You're seeing Alvin Kamara be utilized in a way that I feel like is the best way for the Saints to win football games. Like, get him the ball in space, do these dump offs, use them in passing patterns. And when you saw Jameis as a quarterback, Alvin Kamara's involvement in passing game wasn't really there because he was always looking to throw downfield. Now they have Andy Dalton in there who's more than willing to check it down. You're seeing some big plays be made by Kamara in this offense, and I think that he's good enough with Chris Olave and whoever their tight end ends up being to make some plays there. So I don't mind it. Again, if he ends up being the starting quarterback this week, you want to roll Andy Dalton out there. He's not going to go out there and throw for 350 and 3 scores. He's going to come off the field for Taysom Hill sometimes, which is certainly frustrating. But, you know, if you need a guy that's not going to absolutely kill you this week, I do think that you can get by here with Andy Dalton.
Aaron Rodgers obviously has been awful this year, but this week gets Detroit. Could you trust him in DFS lineups based on the matchup, or still not enough to go with him?
I mean, again, who's catching the football for him? You know, Romeo Doubs obviously had a decent game by default last week. You know, Christian Watson's dealing with the concussion. Samari Toure caught a touchdown pass out of nowhere. I didn't even know the guy was on the roster, right? Like, that's where we're down to. With Green Bay. They made no moves today, which I think surprised many, considering some of the names that were supposedly available. You talked about Brandon Cooks right before you went to break there. Like, Brandon Cooks is on the market. How don't you go make a trade for him? How do you allow the Bears to get Chase Claypool? You know, if you're bringing Aaron Rodgers back and you're paying Aaron Rodgers all that money, why are you not figuring out a way to get him somebody that can catch the football? We'll see if Allen Lazard can come back for this week. But for me, against the Lions, this just feels like an Aaron Jones week, right? You saw Aaron Jones run for 140 yards last week and a much tougher matchup for him against Buffalo. Like, why would he not have similar, if not greater, success against the Detroit Lions here? So I'm not really loving the Aaron Rodgers play this week.
Hanging with John Impemba from fantasyalarm.com and host of the Game Day Playbook every Sunday, 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern on Bettor Sports Network. Give him a follow on Twitter at jimpemba777. A lot of NFL and NBA coverage on the website, authored by this guy. He's been a powerhouse, a power back all day long with all the news that's broken. It did some freaking basketball content as well. Never ends for you, Impemba, but thank you so much for having the time to stop by.
Yeah, anytime you guys want me on, I'm happy to talk anything you guys want. It's always fun.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Again, you can give John a follow on Twitter at jimpemba777. A lot of fun takes, memes, a lot of that Spider-Man memes. That's one of his go-tos. A very good follow and a hell of a lot of content. Let's talk to someone else who's very passionate about the NBA, and he's actually coming up next for Bettor Sports Live. It's Rick Kamla. Let's talk some hoops. Let's talk about what's going on with this coaching situation here. It's the Playbook on BSN.
The Playbook with Fensty and Ronis is sponsored by Jock Market. Make real money every hour, every minute, every second of every game.
Co-founder of Jock Market. Dave, what's up, man?
Hey guys, how are you doing? Thanks for having me.
Doing?
Thank you for sponsoring the show on the network and everything, man. We much appreciate it.
How would you recommend a novice make their introduction into Jock Market?
For most people, we recommend we have free beginner contests. So anyway, if you played fewer than 50 events, free to enter. And instead of trading with cash like you do in our cash markets, we give everyone chips, the same number of chips to trade, and we rank people at the end based on how many chips you finish with. So totally free to enter, only against other novices, and you can sort of build a portfolio in a way that you would with real cash, just in a way that's a little more risk-free. For the people that are more, a little more adventurous and you want to deposit right away, I'd say pick, one or two players you think are going to be undervalued, and it's just that simple, right? They're undervalued today. I think they're going to outperform. Buy a couple shares and watch what happens to the price. Watch where people are offering to pay for them, and then as the game goes on, you say like, hey, Lamar Jackson's having a real bad first half. Let's say, he's probably going to be the most expensive player. There might be opportunity to buy low on him, or kind of watch as the game goes on and how the prices react. I'd say that's probably the best way to.
So it's like a second screen experience where you kind of have to have it up while you're watching the games on Sunday and stuff like that to really be able to truly take advantage, huh?
Actually, what's great is that we have a lot of people that do that, but a lot of people will buy before the games and just
come back and check.
Yeah, because we have the guaranteed payouts at the end. You don't have to trade. There might be an opportunity for you to, reallocate your funds or invest more, buy, sell, short sell, whatever you want to do. But we have plenty of people who just buy and hold, and that's their whole experience, and they do pretty well on that.
Would you?
Zach Wilson in the shotgun, takes the snap, 3rd and 5, 3-man rush, rolling to his right, looks downfield, fires a bomb for Garrett Wilson. He's got it at the 25, spins inside the 20, still on his feet, into the red zone. Garrett Wilson all the way down to the 12-yard line of New England, and it's a big chunk play of 54 yards.
The Playbook with Fensty and Ronis, presented by FantasyAlarm.com, sponsored by Jock Market. Stay in the game.
Garrett Wilson, Jets Radio Network on the call. Not traded. Don't freak out, Jets fans. Don't freak out, okay? The Jets could use him. They could also use Zach Wilson throwing as well. But, we said we're going to talk NBA with our next guest, Rick Kamla, who you can check out all week long on Bettor Sports Network, right after us, 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern for Bettor Sports Live. But one of the things that Rick does, he gives stuff away. We're giving away our daily social giveaway, and it's all week long on Twitter. You can follow us at Bettor Network and retweet the official pinned giveaway post when you go to @Bettor Network, because one lucky Bettor fan will win today's prize, a Garrett Wilson, who you just heard a little context clues right there, a Garrett Wilson autographed full-size Jets football helmet. The contest closes tonight at 9 Eastern. On Bettor Sports Live with our guest, Rick Kamla. He is going to announce the winner, but you must follow Bettor Network on Twitter and retweet the pin giveaway post to qualify. Brought to you by GetInTheGame.com and Bettor Sports Network. You can follow Rick on Twitter at Rick Kamla Sports. Rick, big giveaway tonight, man. And as a Jets fan, I might have to create some kind of phony account there so I can win the freaking helmet.
Well, you know how this goes. Fensty Ronis, what's up, man? We're excited to give that away. We gave away a Bryce Harper signed baseball last night to Andrew Elmquist. I don't know if he's out there in the chat room right now, but anyway, we love giving this stuff away. We're like Oprah at Christmas, man.
Love that.
Well, big story today in the NBA with the Nets and Steve Nash gone. And I mean, look, the Nets have kind of been a disaster for a while now, but what's your whole takeaway here with what's going on with the Nets and their coaching situation, where it looks like, even though I guess it's not official yet, it looks like Ime Udoka could be coaching this team.
Yeah. So let me just, you guys are journalists. I'm a journalist. Let's talk shop here for just a second. This news dropped at 12:55 p.m. Eastern time, 5 minutes before I go on the air on NBA radio. Woke up, 9 o'clock, prepping on the show, coming up with all these rhymes, all these goodies, all this stuff, right? Didn't use a single thing that I prepped on. Me and Antonio Daniels literally did 3 hours on Nash and Udoka with 5 minutes of prep. I'm not looking for a pat on the back. I'm just it was a crazy, insane day. Now let me give you a betting angle, and then we can circle back to maybe sort of just like a global NBA angle here. If you had the Nets to win it all, win the East, win the Atlantic, win anything, okay, you could take that ticket and tear it up with Steve Nash as the coach of that team. These guys weren't playing for him. The messaging has gone stale. They're going through the motions out there. They're a shell of a team. They're a ghost of a team. And frankly, outside of obviously Durant and Irving, they're just not very talented. The Nets kind of sort of suck, guys. You got two guys at 30 points per game, and it falls all the way off the table. Curry's not back yet. Joe Harris isn't the same dude. TJ Warren isn't ready yet. God knows when he will be. So this was a rotting carcass of a basketball team that was going nowhere. All right, now you've got Ime Udoka, who navigated beautifully a dilemma last year. Remember when Marcus Smart called out Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown early in the year? That could have derailed the whole operation. Rookie head coach, he navigates them to the NBA Finals and a 2-1 lead over Golden State. Ime Udoka is a stud. This is why, obviously, the allegations, what he did and all that kind of stuff. It is what it is, right? But let's just talk about what this man does for his career. He's really, really good at it. And he's a difference maker. And he's an asset. And so it's a great get for the Brooklyn Nets. It's an upgrade, frankly. And it revives all of those things that you might have bet on with the Nets. Championship, winning the East, going to the finals, winning the Atlantic, like game on. Like you're back in business on that, as opposed to ripping those up to shreds with the current, I should say, pre-Nash firing state of the Nets.
Rick, speaking of the Nets here, Ben Simmons, do you ultimately think that Ben Simmons is a good piece for this team? Because I don't know if he'd be a good piece on any team, to be honest with you. Limited offensively and, plays pretty good perimeter defense, but can he get it together enough to be able to mesh with other teammates? That's something I've always questioned about the guy. Do you think that Simmons will fit ultimately with this Nets team with the current roster composition?
He should. In theory, he's a perfect fit with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. You don't have to tell them to shoot, right, guys? That they'll go out there and they'll get them up, and they want to get 30. They want to get their numbers. And they do play defense. Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving do actually play defense. It's mystifying that they're 30th in the NBA in defense, right? It's mystifying. Royce O'Neal's a defensive player. KD and Kyrie can play defense. Claxton's a defensive player. Like, why is your defense 30th, man? And so Udoka is going to come in and clean that up too. He's a noted, that's like he coaches both sides of the ball, but that's like what he's rooted in his defense. But to Ben Simmons, Fensty, does he and Ronas, does he love basketball? Because
I don't know anymore.
Look, he was one of my you guys know at College Hoops I have a lab experiment player or two, right? Ayton, Lonzo Ball, Paula Banchero last year. Like, I have a lab experiment guy. And Ben Simmons was that guy for me that year at LSU, right? I don't know how much LSU basketball you guys watch with Ben Simmons. There was not fire, eye of the tiger, a big cheesy grin on his face. There wasn't. It was just this flat line. It's almost like the Michael Myers, Halloween mask. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I'll start there. Like, this guy hasn't played in a million days, and he's out there like just going through the motions, man. So I'm not sure he loves the game of basketball, fellas. I'm not. And now think about it now. Not only do we have, like, where's his head at? What's up with that? He had back surgery. Now, I thought it was load management when he was going to miss last night's game with the, left knee maintenance or whatever the hell they called it. Well, now he's missing tonight's game as well. So this is not load management. He had probably compensatory from the comeback off of the back surgery. And so now the guy's freaking hurt again, man. So I'm not a Ben Simmons guy. I never have been. I'm trying to kind of hang in there and not just dump on the dude and maintain a level of optimism. But fellas, it's very, very hard to find. Very hard to find.
Utah has probably been the biggest surprise in the NBA so far. A lot of people thought they would be tanking, and they had, not only have they won, but they've beaten Denver, Minnesota, the Pelicans, and now the Grizzlies in 2 straight games. Is this something that can last? Is it just a hot start? What are your thoughts on Utah right now?
Well, again, let's go back to that journalism 101 conversation we were having, right? So that was one of the things I had cooked up for me and Antonio to talk about earlier today on NBA radio, was exactly how you set that up. Didn't get to any of it, right? So now we'll talk about it here.
That's how radio goes.
That's how radio goes. We got to play the hits, and it's all good, and I get it, and we had fun. But this has been a crazy day, fellas. But Utah at 6-2. I love that you went into their schedule. They haven't just beaten OKC and Orlando and Detroit, right? They're beating good teams. I know you guys watch hoops. I watch hoops. There's a vibe at their arena. I want to say the Delta Center. I don't even know what the hell, Vivint or some whatever the hell. Anyway, there's a super vibe in their arena. It's still the same Utah love fest. They're 4-0 at home, by the way. You know, teams go in there, altitudes, fans screaming at you. It's different. Allah Abdul Nabi told me once upon a time, toughest place ever to go play is Utah. And I've heard that from a lot of other players over the years. So
because of the poison pizza that Michael Jordan suffered from?
It could be that, but I think you've really touched on the general nature of the people in the stands, right? Like they want it. They want it for their Jazz. Any old way, guys, you've got 6 players averaging double figures on this team. You had 6 guys in double figures last night as they mauled the Memphis Grizzlies with Ja Morant, scoring 37, and they still blew them out of the water. Memphis wasn't even close last night. You know, you've got Sexton. Markkanen's at about 23 per game. Jordan Clarkson's at about 16, 17 per game. Malik Beasley is playing well. Kelly Olynyk is playing well. Look, I like all of these guys. I do. And now they're all in the same team together. And you don't have a star. You don't even have a Robin, guys. Think about it. Utah doesn't even have a Robin, let alone a Batman. They got Alfred and you know a bunch of extras on the Hollywood set. But they're winning. And Will Hardy obviously can coach. I think we're finding out here that the young fella, like, he's they love him in Boston. Like, they freaking love him in Boston. They didn't want him getting out of their program, but Utah came a-calling, and it was his time. So, Ronis, I'm giving you a long answer here. I still feel like Utah is going to get in Victor Wembanyama mode. We're super early. They're off to a good start. And I still feel like, why are we doing this? Why did we trade Gobert? Why did we trade Mitchell? Why did we trade Bojan? Why did we trade Pat Bev? Why did we trade Royce O'Neal? Think about that, guys. That's 5 dudes. 5 dudes. That's a house cleaning. And so now off a hot start, you're going to change your whole outlook that we're going to be buyers at the trade deadline, not sellers. I don't know. I think these guys can be poached at any time. And when you think about it, I guess you've got to build up value for a trade, right? Olynyk has boosted value. Guys on the team have boosted value. So maybe it's been smart of Danny Ainge to rock this way, win a few games. I'll tank later, but build up value on guys, then move them. Then you're not going to have the vets that you can win games with. And maybe there's a 30-game losing streak coming up later in the year. But guys, I can't get here with like 2 weeks in. Oh, there's been a paradigm shift with the thinking of the Utah Jazz. I just can't get with that.
The one thing, Rick, I do get behind, and we saw Cleveland with Lowry, Markkanen executed perfectly, the Skyline lineup. It's a major matchup nightmare when you have Markkanen at the 3, Jared Vanderbilt at the 4, Olynyk at the 5. This is what Cleveland did that garnered a lot of their success, and now Utah's doing it too. And it makes me wonder why more teams don't try to build like that, because it's clearly impacting them positively. They're up there in the standings along with teams like the Blazers and even the Spurs, Rick. What's going on in this NBA, man, with these Western Conference teams being up top?
Yeah, we've had some really, really crazy stuff going on. I'm trying to make sense, guys, of 10 players averaging 30 points per game right now. I'm trying to make sense of that. I'm trying to make sense of half the league averaging more than 115 points per game. Half of the league, guys. Last year, we had 2 teams at 115 points, and that was the top of the NBA. Wow. You guys tell me, what think about that. Half of the league's at 15 a game, and last year we had 2 teams at 115 per game. And we got 10 dudes at 30 points per game right now. Like, that is super nutty. The San Antonio Spurs being 5-2 right now is super nutty. They got a bunch of guys averaging double figures. They're going with sort of like platoons, and you're playing 20 and you're playing 20, and they're playing their young guys, and dang it, they're winning. But dang it, again, the tank is coming. And the Victor sweepstakes will hit San Antonio. You don't want to start the season in tank mode, guys. Because then, like, you got to win. You got to at least try to win the town over early, right? And then, all right, because the NBA season has started. Everybody's excited, the pomp and circumstance. Okay, give them a good show, right? And then, all right, boo, let's power down at some point here and really get into the Victor sweepstakes. And so, and then you've got teams going for it, like Detroit, Orlando. Like, they're trying to be good, and they just can't. Orlando's being besieged by injuries. Detroit, you saw how they lost last night, right, at Milwaukee, totally in the game, 1-possession game. And Cade Cunningham, who we all love, bricked a couple of big shots late in the game. That's why the Bucks walked off winners and why they walked off losers. So it's going to take a minute for these young teams to get to learn how to win. But in terms of the tanking and not, I'm still looking at all these bottom teams like at some point they're going to start shutting down players and going forward for Victor.
Sure, deceive the audience for San Antonio right there for the Spurs to do. Yeah, I can see that happening. Rick, very quickly, what's coming up on Bettor Sports Live tonight besides this awesome Garrett Wilson giveaway that you got?
So, I mean, wow. I'm working on the rundown right now. We're going to start with all the trades in the NFL. We'll get to NBA props. Then we'll get to the little World Series unpacking. And I got series. And tonight, going from Thor to Suarez, the Nash thing. I'll try to touch on that. So a ton of stuff, ton of betting advice and fantasy advice for the people. We've also got great guests. We've got Paul Charchian coming up. We've got Steve Alexander coming up, and we've got Nick Whalen coming up. And so it's a huge show. Guys, it's an extravaganza. And it's always a pleasure to be on here with you guys. Keep kicking ass and taking names and spreading the word here about Bettor Sports Network.
Get Bettor Sports Live, 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern. Rick, have a great show. I don't think you have enough to talk about tonight, but dominate it anyway, all right?
All right, thank you, guys. Be well.
Thank you. You too. At Rick Kamla Sports on Twitter for Cam. Rony called us journalists a couple of times there, man. I know I'm not sitting there breaking stories, but you and I have had conversations about us
journalists.
Being,
when
yes,
I worked
I know
in a
we're
newspaper, I was a journalist. We're not journalists. We're not
So
reporting. We're not breaking stories. We're not journalists.
So can you still say that you are a journalist technically, even though
Right
you're not?
now, no, I'm not. No, I'm not right now.
Not a journalist right now. When was the last time you wrote an article for a newspaper? 6 years ago? 7 years ago?
Well, I did do some fantasy stuff for the New York Post Daily News.
Nice. What'd you do wait, how long ago was that?
5-6 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. There was this guy, I thought this guy who used to listen to you in the morning, his name was Jared. And I think he even proposed to
Jared Wilk. He works for the New York Post.
Come on. How great is that connection right there? That I remember two things about your show.
Yeah, you're phenomenal. It's great.
I know. Clearly, I could hear the sarcasm in your voice. But tonight, and again, we'll remind you once again. By the way, Ross, you had a question about whether or not that you can win something even again after winning something before. I'm being told by the brass here at BSN that you are still, Ross, eligible there. If you did win something, you can win something again. And Rick Kamla is going to announce it later tonight about that Garrett Wilson autographed full-size Jets football helmet. The contest closes at 9 Eastern on Bettor Sports Live. When Rick Kamla will announce the winner, all you got to do, follow Bettor Network on Twitter, retweet the pin giveaway post to qualify. Please, somebody win this. Don't make them give this to me. Or you can because you guys all like me. You want me to have some more cool memorabilia. But honestly, would rather you have it. We're going to go over fantasy football stock watch, flip it back to football. We're going to go over some waiver targets as well. And then back to basketball, we go 4 games on tap. Got to ask Mr. Ronis about what he thinks about a rookie's potential who had a very nice return game and very cheap. When it comes to DFS, got some props for you as well. It is the playbook, your playbook to victory with Fensty and Ronis. We're powered by FantasyAlarm.com, sponsored by Jock Market here on BSN.
The Playbook with Fensty and Ronis, presented by FantasyAlarm.com. Weekdays at 5 p.m. Eastern, sponsored by Jock Market. Stay in the game.
Hang out in the Bettor Zone. Will you track NFL live action on Bettor Sports Network?
I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing that when I look at the lines, I say, okay, if it's a Detroit game, I'm probably going to bet the over. I'm going to look for ways for it to go to the under, but I'm probably going to bet the over. There's certain things that I look at, and I don't know if that's a smart way to do it because you're using something that happened as biased, but to this point, it seems to be working out.
Yeah, I mean, everyone has their own strategy, right? On how they bet. I always tell people all the time, hey, whatever works for you, do it. It's kind of like in the old days, I used to be a personal trainer, and people would come in thinking there was only one way to work out, right? And I like, no, you got to find what works for you and your lifestyle. Plenty of ways to lose weight, and there's not one style. And I think betting's just like that. It took me years to figure out the right style for me. So, I had some tough runs as a youngster growing up, but you figure the stuff out. I don't really care what the public and the sharps are betting. I just don't. Like, I understand it's an interesting little nugget that people put out there, but I don't think it impacts the game. So that's something I don't really look at much.
Middling is something we can try to do. You bet a team pregame -4, you live bet the other team +10. You can win both. Can you talk about that? Middling.
Listen, middling is that's why it's always hard to say like what the sharps are on. Sometimes the sharps are on 3 different plays in the same game. This is how they bet. They're looking for the best number, then live, they'll come in again on the other team. They're looking to hit this both ways. So that's a more advanced betting strategy that I don't think most people would do. But yeah, I mean, it's always a good idea. And again, when there's more games like in college, it's a little easier to do because you can find some good situations there. I try to do it once in a while. I probably don't do it as much as I should. Yeah, it's a great strategy.
Hang out in the Bettor Zone for a better NFL game day experience. Sundays at 1 Eastern on Bettor Sports Network.
Jock Market, stay in the game.
It's time for the Playbook Stock Watch. Whose stock is up?
Here again, another shotgun design run with Braxton Jones out in front. Clears on a block. Left at the end zone. Touchdown. Touchdown, Justin Fields. Touchdown, Bears.
And whose stock is down?
Carr, shotgun. And this time, middle of the field. Intercepted. Picked off.
The Playbook with Fensty and Ronis. Presented by FantasyAlarm.com.
Bears and Chargers radio networks on the call there. A little Justin Fields touchdown, Derek Carr interception, because both of those players headline my fantasy football weekly stock watch video on fantasyalarm.com. Get 3 players trending up, 3 players trending down, looking at future matchups, taking all that into consideration. You always account for variable change when it comes to the stock market. And there are some players who even a few weeks ago I had trending up, now trending down, vice versa as well. But for those that are just tuning in, maybe you're working all day, you had your head buried, and you don't know what's gone on in the NFL. Well, let me catch you up here before we talk about stock and waivers. And that's all the trades that went down from the NFL trade deadline day. New Minnesota Viking tight end T.J. Hawkinson with Irv Smith out with a high ankle sprain, 8 to 10 weeks. And that just shows when we talk about high ankle sprains, that timetable really varies. 8 to 10 weeks. That is a bad one right there. The Bears adding another piece to the receiving core, getting Chase Claypool from the Steelers. Miami not only landing Bradley Chubb, but also in sending Chase Edmonds to the Broncos, adding another running back to their core, but then trading for Jeff Wilson, who Coach McDaniel very familiar with. He will now be in the backfield with Raheem Mostert. We'll have to see just how much Wilson will eat into Mostert when talking to Ronis before, talking to John and Pembroke from FantasyAlarm.com. Both of them thinking he could have some involvement here. So for those with Mostert, get ready to hold your breath. Then you also had the Bills at the buzzer trading for Nyheim Hines, sending Zach Moss and a pick back the other way. And as we talked about, someone that you're going to have to look at, maybe to stash, someone who's caught a lot of passes when called upon. 10 a few weeks ago was Deion Jackson. And then this one that we haven't even discussed yet, Rome. Remember Calvin Ridley, the guy who is suspended for the entire year? Well, Jacksonville trades a couple of picks for Calvin Ridley. Very interesting there, adding to their core. We've been talking about just how great Travis Etienne has looked. So now next year, Calvin Ridley going to be joining the core with Christian Kirk, slowly building up, adding more pieces for Trevor Lawrence. What'd you think of that deal?
Yeah, it makes sense for them. Bringing another weapon there for Lawrence. And obviously there's a lot of contingencies on the trade, depending on how much he plays. And, it looks like he should be back and good to go and play next year. I think they wouldn't make the trade if they didn't think that. So long-term, a weapon for Lawrence, who's got to get better because he has not played well and he's still making bad throws in the red zone.
Yeah, no, that's for darn sure. Do you give him a pass on everything that happened last year? because of all the drama that was going on, the Urban Meyer situation really taking a hold of all the attention there. Do you kind of give Lawrence a pass for his rookie season, or anybody in situations where the first year of their career are marred by issues when it comes to bad coaching and stuff off the field, especially?
Yeah, last year, yes, but not now. And again, that interception last week in the red zone against Denver, and it kind of cost them the game. So he's got to stop making those mistakes. That was an easy play where you just throw it away. You don't force the throw. And he's done that a few times this year.
Yeah, no, he definitely has. Let's talk a little bit more about the fantasy stock watch video that I have on fantasyalarm.com. And this that we already talked about, Justin Fields. He is trending up. And then after that, another player trending up too. And I mentioned this yesterday, DJ Moore getting more involved, pun intended, right there, Roan. I mean, what is your prognosis for the rest, at least the rest of the way, but we could talk short term for DJ Moore, who's been a lot more productive in the last few weeks?
Yeah, you definitely feel good about DJ Moore right now because it was a disaster early on and people spent a third, fourth round pick on him. But we've seen that the target share is just enormous over the last couple of weeks. 11 targets last week, 10 the week before, and he now has at least 7 targets in 5 straight games. But the one thing we've seen is the ability to get the football to Moore right now with, Walker at quarterback. So I think you're happy right now. And he didn't get traded and no Christian McCaffrey. So he will be getting a lot of targets going forward. And he scored a touchdown now in 2 straight games. And he actually has 3 touchdowns on the season. And that's been one of the biggest problems throughout his career is he has not been able to find the end zone. He's never scored more than 4 touchdowns in a season. So of all years, it looks like he might be able to set a career high in touchdowns this year. He now has 3, so he needs 2 more. Now he's still kind of off the pace of the reaching 1,100 receiving yards for the 4th straight year. He would really have to go on a big run there. I mean, it's still possible, but he's got 425 in 8 games, so he's definitely not on pace. But at least you feel much better about him going forward with everything that's transpired over the last couple of weeks.
Someone that's been very difficult to really want to go forward with, Derek Carr. We talked a little bit about it yesterday, Roan. It's just you want to see better performances from this guy. I mean, Devontae Adams having him it hasn't propelled Derek Carr to have even a huge game like we're waiting on seeing from this guy. Do you see things getting better? And again, I know that Darren Waller's been a little bit banged up. Renfro was a little bit banged up too. Do you see things improving for Derek Carr in the second half of the fantasy season?
I mean, it can't get much worse. One thing I've seen from them is they're way better at home and they're terrible on the road. So, but it's hard to figure out what's going on with them because they're just so inconsistent. And they've been, outside of last week, they've been pretty competitive in a lot of games this year. Last week was just one of those situations where they didn't show up. The schedule has some decent spots, but some tough ones as well. It's not going to be easy. Even this week, going to Jacksonville, they're okay defensively. They got to go to Denver. They have to go to Seattle. They play against the Rams, although the Rams have lost 3 straight games by double digits. They have to play at Pittsburgh on Christmas Eve, which won't be easy. They have the 49ers and the Chiefs. So it's not the greatest schedule, but, they could be playing from behind. So, I mean, look, I don't think Derek Carr is going to really help you win a championship this year.
Someone else that we have to talk about, Rowan, and you mentioned this a couple of weeks ago and you were on to something, and that's Brian Robinson. I think a lot of us were just kind of too obsessed with maybe what we saw in preseason. I know I was one of them there, and I got him on a couple of teams, but he's just not running well, man. And I know, look, I'm not saying it has to do with anything that happened there, and he got shot, and thank God that he's okay. And the fact that he's already back and playing after getting shot a couple of times right before the season is absolutely amazing. But when talking about it from the production standpoint, when talking about it from how he looks, he's not really looking that impressive. And the problem is you're not going to really be able to rely on him for anything else because they're going to be throwing to Gibson. They're going to be throwing to McKissick. And when it comes to carries, you're starting to see even the snaps from last week that Gibson getting a little bit more involved now, man. So Brian Robinson is someone, and you marked this down when I went over the prop on whether or not he would be able to go over 13 and a half carries, but he hasn't looked very good.
No, he hasn't. They've been forcing the ball to him. I don't get it. They did it in that Bears game, that Thursday night game. I'm like, why do they keep giving him the football? He's not picking up yards, and Gibson has looked way better. And it finally took until last week for them to really use Gibson more, especially in the passing game, and which makes sense. I mean, Gibson was a wide receiver in college. So Gibson had 7 targets last week, caught all of them for 58 yards and a touchdown. And Gibson had 7 carries. Now, he didn't do much on the ground either. Robinson had 8. But Robinson, I mean, it's big trouble if you have Robinson. There's no way you can count on him because he's not involved in the passing game at all. And he's not doing anything on the ground, averaging 3.2 yards per carry. So he's dependent on the touchdown. So Gibson is the guy that you want right now in this backfield, not Robinson.
Yeah, and then there's the Rams situation as well. There's Darrell Henderson too, and this was something we talked about. I mean, the offensive line has been brutal when it comes to LA, and Cam Akers, he wasn't traded. So at one point here, and I know that he tweeted out a little bit ago that he misses playing football and everything like that, but what do you think about Henderson moving forward? Because it's kind of hard to trust this backfield at all. And we've been talking about issues with trusting Stafford, but this backfield has become very convoluted, very hard to trust Darrell Henderson.
Yeah, I mean, the offensive line is a major problem. If you look at any running back this season behind that Rams offensive line, they all have not done anything because the blocking is just not there. They're not run blocking well. The offensive line has undergone a huge transition from last year when they won the Super Bowl. So, Kyrie Williams has been mentioned a lot, and they opened his window last week. So he's probably not going to be back this week, maybe next week. We'll see. But it's just not an ideal situation, and it's going to be difficult to see Cam Akers coming back to this team. I know they said if he's not traded, they will, but it doesn't look like he wants that. And it's once that relationship went down the path that it did, it's hard to recover from that and just be like, all right, I'm back. Let's forget everything that happened and let's go. I don't see that happening. So, it's not good. I mean, everyone's looking for an answer in this backfield, and it might be no one this year because they just have not had the ability to run block and open holes.
He's Adam Ronis. I am Justin Fensterman. Let's talk some fantasy football waivers here before we get to the night slate in the NBA. Before we do that, though, Roan, any thoughts? And I know that Rick Camlo, who joins us, who's up next for Better Sports Live, I know he mentioned about the pitching situation in Philly, but we had the game postponed last night. Now going to start in a little bit here. Any of your thoughts change regarding the Phillies and the Astros? What are you expecting to see tonight now that the Phillies have had the pitching change?
Yeah, I mean, I think you could see some runs in this game tonight. The Astros really crush left-handed pitching, and Suarez is on the mound, and don't know how deep we'll go. We know that Philadelphia ballpark's going to be rocking tonight. So I think the rain out helped Philadelphia because now they've also moved Aaron Nola up to game 4, while the Astros are not going to push Verlander to Wednesday. So they'll go with Christian Javier versus Nola in game 4, and then game 5, it'll be Verlander against Noah Syndergaard. Now, that could also change, if they use Syndergaard in relief. So still a lot of things to be figured out, but should be a good game tonight. Looking forward to it. McCullers versus Suarez, and Philly definitely will be rocking there tonight.
Let's talk waiver targets, and we'll also take your comments as well on players that you're looking to pick up. Let us know also on players that you're potentially dropping as well. This is something very important. You don't want to give up on players who maybe are underperforming now but have a good second half schedule, let's just say. So let us know if you're debating adding, dropping, and even a big time with trades. You haven't made any trades in your fantasy leagues this year, have you?
No, I have not.
Neither have I. I've been offered a few trades, but nothing really worth it when it comes to my leagues here. Let's talk a little bit more in depth on waivers before we talk some NBA betting on the Playbook on Better Sports Network.
Don't miss the Playbook, presented by FantasyAlarm.com, weekdays at 5 p.m. Eastern. Sponsored by Jock Market. Stay in the game.
Co-founder of Jock Market. Dave, what's up, man?
Hey guys, how are you doing? Thanks for having
me. How you doing?
Thank you for
coming on.
sponsoring the show on the network and everything, man. We much appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
we have one of your I don't know what you should call him, not a sycophant really, maybe a disciple, maybe I don't know, John Legueza on once in a while, and he is like
he's on it,
like all in caps jock market, and like his enthusiasm for it. I mean, look, like I remember we had Jock Market sponsor one of the athletic shows a while ago too, so I was familiar with the game. But he is like, man, the proselytizer big time of your game.
Yeah, right from the jump. The second we first started talking to him, it was very clear it was a match. He got the game. It was like he's a big stock guy too, so the crossover between that and him making picks every day, it's really like a match, perfect match for us.
That's cool. That's what's up. Me and Nando, we've talked to. I mean, we've been doing shows for a long time. And I remember back in the day interviewing Nigel and Jason Robbins and all of that stuff. And one of the interesting things when we talked to Nigel was hearing about the story of FanDuel and how it kind of came about at South by Southwest. How did Jock Market come about? Where did the thought process come from? Like, what were you into at the time? What were you looking to do? How did Jock Market become to be the app that's on our phones today?
Yeah, no, great question. So, working with my co-founder Tyler at our previous company, we played a lot of DraftKings and FanDuel on our own, and obviously we liked it. We loved playing, but figured there were other ways out there, other ways to play that'd be more interesting. And we've also both been interested in investing for a long time, and it was kind of crazy that the stock market and sports concept hadn't really been. I mean, it'd been people had tried it before, but that it hadn't really worked. And then the daily fantasy spin really showed us an opportunity to make it work, where you can have an intrinsic value for those shares. So you have people coming and buying in shares, but if it's a perpetual market, the shares never pay out. It's kind of hard to figure out what they'll be worth. But in a daily market, you buy those shares, in the afternoon. By that evening, for the most part, they're going to pay out real cash. So you have an intrinsic value. I think this is going to be worth X dollars by the end of the night. So now I have a number I can come and pay for it. So that's really where we saw the opportunity. It's just a matter of making the game work within fantasy sports regulations and making it fun and interesting and give people the opportunity to make money by playing.
This is The Playbook with Fensty and Ronis, presented by FantasyAlarm.com and sponsored by Jock Market. Make real money every second of the game.
The Playbook with Fensty and Ronis, powered by FantasyAlarm.com here on BSN, continues here. Wild day with trades. We got some NBA that we're going to talk a little bit when it comes to props, value on the DFS slate. Just 4 games tonight. Going to talk about some waivers here, Ron. And when it comes to somebody, and I always put a list of players together, different positions that we could potentially, anybody is on the waiver wire. Who are some of the players, Ron, that you're going to be looking to place claims on? I know it's league dependent and everything like that, but someone like I know that you thought before that Jeff Wilson might not be on a lot of waiver wires. What do you think about Kenyon Drake being on a decent amount of waiver wires?
It could be. The problem with him is where they play Monday night. So we might not know the status of Gus Edwards before then. So you have to figure out whether you need a starter this week. You might pick him up and then find out Edwards is playing, and then you don't really feel as good about it. So, if Edwards is out, then yeah, he's in a good spot. So that's the problem right now when you're trying to figure out what to do with Drake. So it really depends on where you are in your roster for this week and what other options are on waivers.
What about any of the Atlanta guys? I don't know. Do you have any of the Atlanta guys on your team? I guess we're kind of stuck right now in a frozen pattern until we figure out what the deal with Cordero Patterson is. Because
and Damian Williams,
right?
Both could be back this week, could be next week. So, if Algier and Huntley are out there, yeah, pick them up. But you have to understand that, depending on the Patterson and Williams situation, that they could become someone that you can't use.
No. Anyone else that you think from the running back side that we should look to pick up? You mentioned Deion Jackson before with Nyheim Hines, now a member of the Buffalo Bills. Anybody else that you think could be out there that you might even be looking at?
There's not a lot. Basically.
What about Akers? I know that you said this is not. Yeah, I was going to say this.
What's going to happen? He's going to come back and all of a sudden be the lead guy. And again, he wasn't doing anything before, so I wouldn't pick him up.
No, yeah, that time is past for him at this point here. I mean, we were told that potentially, like, if he wasn't traded, he'd rejoin the team. But I guess
It sounds like he doesn't want to, and I can't blame him.
Yeah, and I bet the team as well. I mean, the team wanting him back. They don't want to. He doesn't want to play with them. How can that impact the locker room as well? That's something that the Rams are going to have to think about too. Let's talk wide receivers to look to pick up. I put a couple of options there and start with someone who's been a little bit more productive over his last few games. What are your thoughts on Mecole Hardman? Are the Chiefs receivers? And I know that, and we're going to get, by the way, JC, we're going to get to your trade there because I saw that you have Tony involved in a trade. But what do you think about that now with the Chiefs receivers? We've been saying that targets have been spread out, and it's very hard outside of course, Travis Kelce. It's very hard to predict who's going to be getting a good amount of targets on a week-by-week basis. But any more trust in Mecole Hardman, even with the arrival of Kadarius Toney?
No, I mean, you have to be desperate. I mean, his target share is like 10%. So, he's dependent on touchdowns. Kadarius Toney enters the mix now. You have Juju, you have MVS, you have Kelce. So it's not ideal, but when you're starting to be like, okay, I need someone this week, and you start looking at the waiver wire, like, well, there's not a lot of good options. Hardman is in an offense where he could score a touchdown. So for me, it has to kind of be a desperation play where I have multiple players on bye, and I'm just trying to fill in a spot and hope that he can get a touchdown this week.
Yeah, another player. But by the way, let's just talk about JC's trade very quickly. He's asking for a trade grade. Interesting. I always love these. He traded Tua, Christian Kirk, Kadarius Toney, and Michael Carter. Wow. 4 players trade that he's given away, and he's getting back Lamar Jackson, Josh Jacobs, Wan'Dale Robinson, and a 14-team PPR. He says he has Stevenson, Edmund, Etienne, Higgins, Davis. He has Mark Andrews as well. Wow, he has Olave, Renfro, Taysom Hill, Russ Wilson. So what do you think of this? So again, Tua, Christian Kirk, Toney, and Michael Carter, and he's getting back Lamar Jackson and Josh Jacobs, especially Wan'Dale Robinson, who has a lot of opportunity there. Giants didn't address their receivers at all here. What'd you think about that? What do you think when you see trades like these with 8 players involved?
I mean, I like the trade because you're upgrading your quarterback. The Ravens schedule gets very easy going forward. So I think you'll start to see them produce. And I know Lamar Jackson has been disappointing, but we know what he can do. And, he's got Russell Wilson at quarterback now, and that clearly has not been an answer. I do like Tua, but I'd rather have Lamar. And you get Jacobs. Now, the problem with Jacobs you saw last week, the Raiders have to be competitive and usually winning. But again, I think that was an outlier. I don't expect them to not show up every week. So, and you already have Stevenson and Etienne anyway. I like the trade. And, with Toney, you might be trading him at his peak because usually with players, before they even play a game, that's when their trade value is highest. Now, if he goes out there and has 2 touchdowns this week, then different story. But I can't see him every week with Juju and Kelce there and learning the offense and stepping right in. How many snaps is he going to play? So it could take some time. So you're trading him because if you wait and he has a game where he plays 10 snaps and does nothing, now you're not going to be able to trade him. I like Kirk, but as we've seen, it's inconsistent. So, and Michael Carter, again, the offensive line is a problem right now. So I think he's upgrading his quarterback, which is important. They're getting Lamar. Although, again, I do like Tua, but I still think Lamar's an upgrade. And as I said, the schedule gets better. And you're getting a good running back in Jacobs, who they have leaned on. And I don't think he gave up anything significant because, again, ETN right now is an RB1. Stevenson is still, even with Harris splitting, Stevenson's the better back, and he's catching a lot of passes. And he's got an elite tight end. I'm not about the connection unless you're playing like in an overall high-stakes league, but he gets the Lamar Andrews connection. If I were you, though, and you have Andrews, I would go pick up Isaiah Likely this week if he's out there. That's the other thing. Again, with the Ravens, they're saying the injury for Andrews is not serious, but they play Monday night, and that's the problem. The Ravens are going to be a big problem this week because of Gus Edwards' status and Mark Andrews. We already know Rashad Bateman is going to miss multiple weeks and could be placed on IR, so that's not an issue. But that's challenging this week with Likely because I think there will be 1 or 2 people in every league who spend money on him. And we're either going to look at it and say, wow, that was brilliant because you saw how he was utilized. He will just step into that Mark Andrews role, which is extremely valuable. But so if you have Andrews, I think you want to get Likely this week for sure. If you don't have him, then it's not as clear cut.
You might be chasing here, but you just said it with Bateman out, maybe some open targets here. And someone who got targeted 8 times in their last matchup here was Demarcus Robinson, who should be available here. I mean, any interest in picking him up at all?
Where I have bye week issues, yeah. I mean, again, there are some leagues where I'm desperate this week. And, in a 14-team league, there's not much on waivers. If he's out there, I'm going to have to pick him up. Just trying to plug in someone for the week. He's not a long-term answer, but if you need to plug in for this week, he should be available on many waiver leagues.
Yes,
on the waiver wire, many leagues.
He had 6 for 64 on 8 targets. The matchup before that, I mean, he put up your standard zeros when you get 1 target or not targeted at all, and then he had 5 in week 6 against the Giants. So maybe he picks things up just a little bit. Talking some waivers with all of you, and someone that was actually just asked in our chat by A. Ross, and this is someone that also is on the list. And we talk about the ongoing health issues with Keenan Allen. What are your thoughts of Josh Palmer?
I think he's probably the best waiver wire add this week if he's available, because it's not even Keenan Allen. Mike Williams is definitely out. So he'll fit into that Mike Williams role, which is probably better than what he was doing before when Keenan Allen was out. So it's a good matchup this week against Atlanta. They're going to have to throw. We saw Carolina have success. I know they traded for a corner from Kansas City, but they still have issues at cornerback. It's their weakness. So Palmer's in a good spot. So he would be the priority pickup of all the receivers we mentioned so far.
Another receiver that could be out there as a matchup against the Bengals here in week 9 targets. And again, we could be chasing, but any interest in Terrace Marshall, 4 for 87 last week. He had only been targeted more than 4 times in that matchup, and that is it here. What are your thoughts on Terrace Marshall? You think he starts to get a little bit more involved?
Yeah, I think in deeper formats you can pick him up. He's running a route almost every time he's on the field. Target share around 20%. Carolina not going to throw a lot, but if they're playing from behind, they will have to. And DJ Moore will get his, but then you could see Marshall step in. So, I do think he's someone you could pick up.
They better not go away, at least from a fantasy standpoint. They better not go away from PJ Walker. I don't care if Sam Darnold looks like God in practice. You stick with PJ Walker, please. We got fantasy teams that are dependent on it at this point here. Let's talk about some tight ends here. And one tight end, Ronan, I brought him up briefly yesterday, but what are your thoughts on, and this is someone I actually included, which we didn't talk about during the fantasy stock watch, Evan Engram ultimately as a pickup if needed. What are your thoughts on
I don't see how he's available on the waiver wire right now. If he is in your league, it's surprising. Why wasn't he picked up? He's been pretty solid every single week. So I'd be shocked if he's available.
Right. And I'm going to say something that's going to probably get me a yelling or something. But, I don't give a crap. I'm just going to say it anyway. I'm seeing on Yahoo leagues, and I know you got to take dead leagues that really aren't playing out. There are a lot of dead leagues in Yahoo. So you got to take it with a grain of salt. But he is still available, according to Yahoo, in about 55% of leagues, only 44% rostered right there, Roan. So I know that we've talked about this in the past and how there's more things to consider, but that's why I bring up someone like Evan Engram.
Yeah, again, there are a lot of dead leagues, and that number is not really representative of the average fantasy league. He's not out there in a lot of leagues. If he is, go get him. But I doubt many people here listening and in this chat, I guarantee you Ingram's not available in their league.
I know that he's got a bye this week, but Dulcich, we've been talking about him. But you've been saying that this is not the week where you can really stash and whatever. The tight end just has been brutal. So for those that do have extra or a lot of bench spots right there, maybe that's someone that you can look to pick up there and save for the next few weeks. Just because this tight end position, as we continue to talk about, has just been so brutal.
Again, if you follow Fantasy Alarm and you check out my rankings every week, he's already on your team. I had him ranked as a top 10 tight end last week. So, and I picked him up in many leagues, including the league we're in together. So Yeah, I mean, it's tough this week. If you have the extra roster spot, maybe you had Irv Smith or struggling tight end, sure, but he should have already been rostered by now.
Yeah, he did it. By the way, last week, I actually, in that same league, I picked up Evan Engram to start in my matchup there that I ended up hanging on and winning. So now I'm 3-5 in that host league. Bunch of 4-4 teams too after this week, I noticed, and a few 3-5s here. So the playoffs will be interesting. I actually forget in that league if the final playoff spot or two is determined by points or wins. It's not. It's wins. So you're the acting commissioner, but you weren't the one
I didn't make the rules.
No, you did not. You're just the acting commissioner at this point here. He's Ronis. I'm Fensty. Let's talk some NBA, and also going to bring up Jock Market 2, our sponsor of the Playbook. I'm going to talk about how you can get involved. We've been mentioning on the NFL side of things, but let's also look at some prices when it comes to shares of players on Jock Market. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to give some props for the NBA, go over some of the latest injuries, 4 games to crush tonight. Let's cover it right now here on the Playbook on Bettor Sports Network.
This is the Playbook with Fensty and Ronis, presented by FantasyAlarm.com and sponsored by Jock Market. Make real money every second of the game.
Bettor Sports Live with Rick Kamla. That's 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 Pacific on Bettor Sports Network.
Andy Reid is the best current coach in the NFL. He's better than Belichick. Belichick has lost his way. He's better than Tomlin. He's better than Harbaugh. He's better than Shanahan. He's better than McCarthy down in Dallas. He's better than all of the gangster NFL coaches right now. Sean McDermott up in Buffalo, he's better than all these guys. Andy Reid is the greatest gangster that we have at head coach in the NFL right now. And I understand that you're saying, well, Belichick is the GOAT, Cam. How can that be true? Now you're bringing up old stuff. Bill Belichick can't draft anymore, okay? Talk to me. Nick Chubb, Sony Michel. Talk to me. DK Metcalf, Debo Samuel versus N'Keal Harry. Okay, talk to me. This dude has lost his way. Remember the year when he should have bottomed out and just tanked, but he couldn't, and he went and got Cam Newton, and they were a mediocre team, right? He's lost his way. And not that he can't coach up a good defense and that kind of thing, but overall, he's lost his way. Andy Reid's an absolute badass. They draft great. He's a great coach. Makes the right decisions, when to go for it, when to kick, when to punt. The guy's the man.
The Playbook with Fensty and Ronis, presented by FantasyAlarm.com.
I hate the stupid unsportsmanlike conduct. As long as you're not disrespectful to the opponent, you should be allowed to celebrate.
How I used to say it, and to bring up, because now basketball's starting, I'm going to bring up
personal. Oh, dude, it's even worse than basketball, isn't it?
So Dikembe Mutombo, who used to get teed up in the 2000s, in the 90s, they didn't give a crap. 2000s, though, when they tightened up the rules, they used to tee him up more when he did the Dikembe finger wag. But they wouldn't tee him up if he did it to the crowd instead of looking at, like, Eton Thomas, like one time I remember, and doing it right to him, or when his back was turned, doing it right to him. If he did it to the crowd, they would never call it. And so that makes me wonder if these players, while, yeah, they want to talk a little smack, maybe they should flex towards the crowd than at the player who they're standing over.
I guess.
I know it's soft, man.
It is soft.
Because you know what?
Like we're gonna give 15 yards for that,
bro. They think that, you know, want to know why they're paranoid? They think that's gonna turn into a fight.
See, I disagree with that. That's not going to start a fight.
I agree with you. They don't agree with
us.
It's
one thing, okay, if you spit in someone's face or say something derogatory, like about their family or something,
right,
yeah, that can incite it. But if you're just like, yeah, I made that play, what? You know what I mean? Like, again, they know the rules. You got to know you're going to get flagged. You have to have discipline. But, like, I don't know. I have no problem with celebration as long as it's not disrespectful.
What's disrespectful? You know,
it's interpretation, and that's my problem. Watch, it's going to cost someone in a big playoff game, and that's when people are going to go crazy. There'll be a third down play. Someone makes a pass breakup, and they're in someone's face. They're going to throw a flag. It'll extend the drive. That team scores, wins the playoff game because of it. You need something drastic for it to really leave an imprint, and I hope that doesn't happen to my team.
Bettor Sports Network is betting, fantasy, collectibles. It's sports talk done better.
Bettor Sports Network is sponsored by Jock Market.
The Playbook with Fensty and Ronis, presented by FantasyAlarm.com.
Shot clock at 8. George goes to work.
Right now, while we're struggling, we need everything, everybody, every point. Tonight was, huge. 35, 9, and 8, 6 steals, 2 blocks. Right now, while we're struggling, we need him to play at that kind of level.
The Playbook with Fensty and Ronis, presented by FantasyAlarm.com on Bettor Sports Network.
Paul George there with some clutch moments here, and this is going to be very interesting to see how the Clippers are going to perform moving forward here in Clippers TV there from that audio you just heard from Coach Lou. But Kawhi Leonard, who's going to be missing a couple of more games and expecting to miss a lot more than that. This is someone who in fantasy, if you targeted him in drafts, I don't know what you were thinking. The last couple of years, especially the last few years, this guy just doesn't care about playing in the regular season. And if he's the least bit hurt, they're going to be very cautious with him. Bro, you weren't targeting Kawhi Leonard anywhere, right? I mean, he misses too many games.
I wasn't, but I don't think it's fair for you to say he doesn't care about the regular season. You're saying he's not hurt right now?
I am saying that he's banged up right now. I'm not saying he's not hurt.
That's what you just said. He doesn't care about the regular season.
So
you're saying that he doesn't want to play, but he's hurt.
I should have probably said that the Clippers would probably want to err on the side of caution with him. So it's maybe they don't care as much about the regular season there and want to just preserve him to be able to be healthy for the playoffs. Because when it comes to this team, and they were the leading odds getters when it comes to winning the championship, that's all contingent upon if these two guys are both healthy come playoff times. Boy, you could say that about anyone. No, this is Kawhi Leonard. They're going to keep him out. This is almost like Joel Embiid, too. The second he feels the least bit of pain for the next few months, he's not going to play. And I'm not saying that he's not hurt right now, but this is what you're looking at. And let's just say this, too. Let's say he was fully healthy. He'd still be missing a handful of games.
Well, he would sit out back-to-backs for sure early in the season. But, I'm sure he's hurt at this point. But thank goodness they won last night because I had a money line parlay with the Sixers, Bucks, and Clippers, man. And I was looking and I'm like, really? They're going to lose to the Rockets? So, fortunately, they held the Rockets to 17 points in the fourth quarter. Even the Bucks had to sweat it out. I was like, really? So I was fortunate to escape there. I figured the Clippers kind of needed a win and George was back. And, Rockets are 1-7 and had yet to win on the road. But they had to sweat it out as George needed a monster performance, including a big 3 late and 35 points to lift the Clippers to just their third victory of the season as they're sitting at 3-4.
Looking at some of the injury notes going into tonight's 4-game slate, Jalen Suggs apparently will play, but he will come off the bench. So this will be very interesting because the Magic guards are very banged up. Their midcourt also a bit banged up too. So when it comes to other injuries, Ayo Dosunmu, we're still waiting on a final call for him. He was listed as questionable. Andre Drummond out for Chicago. No Ben Simmons or Seth Curry for Brooklyn. Golden State still without Dante DiVincenzo. And then besides Suggs now playing, Anthony will be out. Harris Fultz as well. Josh Giddey still hurt for the Oklahoma City.
Giddey is active.
He is active now.
Yes.
He's been out like the whole day.
An hour ago, he was questionable. Now he's active.
Wow. So that changes things a bit. Dang. Would have loved that note before the value video that I put on fantasyalarm.com. Have a few of those Thunder options in there. Things are now going to change just a little bit. Then when it comes to the Timberwolves and the Suns, there no DeAndre Ayton for the Phoenix Suns. And that is what we're looking at for these 4 games when it comes to health. Damn, man, because I'll be real with you. We're talking value, and now the starting 5 videos that we do on the site are now value videos. So when looking at the value, a couple of options that I was actually looking at. I was looking at Lou Dort, and I was looking at Jalen Williams. Jalen Williams, very, very, very cheap on DraftKings and FanDuel. And this is someone who, when he came back, a rookie, and that should be able to play. He was a lottery pick, so should get meaningful minutes. Plays very nice, feisty defense, too. Had a 4-steal game, scored double figures in points, played 27 minutes. This is someone who still can potentially go off tonight and hit that value, but I liked it a lot more knowing Giddey was out about 5-6 hours ago.
And that's the problem with value in the NBA. A lot of it opens up late, like in the last hour. So unfortunately, we have to do those videos early. They have to get produced and put up and have a shelf life. But a lot of times, unfortunately, some of those value plays are not going to be as relevant as you're setting your lineups.
It sucks because Lou Dort's been shooting well over the last few games too. And I could still see him taking double-digit shots because remember, this is the Thunder we're talking about. They don't have a lot of front court options. They hardly have anyone reliable in their front court when it comes to their scoring. But when it comes to value for tonight, and you have this Magic team who suck, the only problem with this Magic team, they move very, very slowly. So the pace is very much dropped when it comes to that. On the other side of it in the value video, Roan, and this guy was mid-priced in the sixes, Wendell Carter Jr., I know he hasn't gotten a lot of double-doubles this year. He has a couple. But if you notice, when he's facing teams with very poor interior front court options, especially at center, he's actually done well and has produced double-double. Tonight, he's got the Thunder. And last week I was talking to you about Ivica Zubac, even in back-to-back games here, still a good value there. He's just got to be able to score some points. The rebounding, I feel like, will be there tonight, but I'm expecting big things from Carter tonight and still thinking that even though I thought it would be more of a split between him and Bamba before the season, I know Bol has been very involved too and playing nicely, but I think that Carter is set up. If you give the guy 30 minutes tonight, I think he has extreme double-double potential.
Yeah, OKC surrendering the most rebounds and the second most blocks to centers. So he is in a good spot tonight.
Yeah, I mean, is there anything from this game when it comes to props that you're looking at? I don't know if you've checked the prop board if you're betting tonight, but anything
I haven't placed any bets now. I'm going to do one of the same game parlays on TNT that FanDuel offers as a risk-free bet. So I will do one of them. I'm probably leaning towards the Minnesota Sun side of it. And I might do one on DraftKings because they're giving like 100% boost, also risk-free. What is it? It's build your NBA stepped up. Same game parlay and get up to 100% profit boost. If your bet loses, get a $10 free bet back. So why not? So I have to put those together. Am I seeing this right? That Gilgeous-Alexander's prop points went down now? It was 28.5. Is it now 25.5? Because
wow.
Let me see. Is that right?
If that's the case, man, I may need to quickly drive up to Jersey and place that bet. Maryland almost there at this point. That would be shocking. I'm still seeing it. Wait a minute.
Yeah, it's 25.5 on DraftKings, minus 125.
That's a good bet. And yeah, you can't you can't believe in the Magic numbers against backcourts because now Cole Anthony is out. We don't know when we're going to see the guy again. So even if Suggs plays off the bench, it still shouldn't impact them too much.
And his points assist is 31.5. I mean, I played it last time out. It didn't cash. Was it the last time out he didn't cash? No, I think it was the game before. Oh, no, it was the Clipper game. Remember, I think he got in some foul trouble early. He only played 34 minutes. He had 24 and 6, and I had over 33.5 that night. But then against Dallas, which was overtime, he had 38 and 9. Man, he's gone over. I might have to play the 25.5, man.
Yeah.
He's gone over that every game except one, the game against the Clippers, and he shot 10 of 23. But he's averaging 23.8 shots from the field. He's going to shoot a ton. Yeah, I might have to play that 25.5.
I like that.
I mean, or do I do the assist too? Because he's averaging 7 assists per game, and he hasn't had lower than 6. So say if he gets 6 assists, all I need is 27 points.
Right.
Or do I just go 25.5 points, which he's gone over in every game except one.
I think if you're feeling better about it going with the assists, you're fine. Both he and Giddey will be playing on and off the ball all night. They'll be kind of swapping like the Hawks do a little bit. Giddey, I think, will be a little bit more on the ball, but I can still see Gilgeous-Alexander. Again, this is the Magic that we're talking about. And the Magic aren't going to be able to they don't have Cole Anthony out there who was actually helping them defensively.
Yeah, he should be able to get to the basket. Orlando is 17th in defensive efficiency. OKC is 5th?
Weird,
Really?
right? Yeah, very
5th?
strange. I don't know. I really don't know.
Well, they faced the Clippers twice, and they probably had no one. I don't know if George played it. Oh, George played in one of them, the second one. And then they played Denver, Minnesota, and Dallas.
Ooh,
very
Carter's prop, his PR is at 25.5. Very appetizing, considering this guy takes double-digit shots. and I'm thinking that he's going to be hitting the double-double. I like that tonight, Rome. If I were able to place the bet, I think I'd place that bet, Carter over 25.5 points and rebounds.
Maybe. Or Banchero, I think he's 22.5.
22.5 points I saw for him. I mean, he's their top option. He's their him and Carter are going to be their prioritized scorers. So I think both are in good spots. They don't have the guards that are going to be able to score on them tonight. So, or rather, they don't have the guards that are going to be able to support them tonight. Pretty good. Let's go to another game and talk about some props there. You mentioned the Timberwolves and the Suns. Like, you might have some interest there in a same game parlay. How do you feel about the Suns center situation? Because immediately I have to bring up the PRs for both Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert. Gobert at 27.5, Towns at 30.5. And we know when it comes to Towns, the scoring ceiling a lot higher. Gobert, that rebounding ceiling higher. But look at who they're contending with in the post. Bismack Biyombo, Jock Landale. And they also have Cam Johnson. Both of these players should be able to crush tonight.
Yeah, Gobert is certainly in a good spot. And we saw last time that Biyombo got in some foul trouble in the game he started with 8 out. So, yeah, I think you could look at both those guys. You would expect there to be some score in this game. And Minnesota's been a disappointment so far. I know they're 4-3, but they really haven't played a strong schedule. I mean, they've played the Thunder twice. They've played the Spurs 3 times. They played the Spurs 3 times and lost twice. They played the Lakers and the Jazz they've played too, which obviously we thought, well, they're not that good and they lost to them. But that's the thing with Minnesota. They're not acclimating to playing very well together so far. They have not really looked good.
No, they haven't. And you have to expect that because Gobert takes up so much of the middle that where are you going to fit big Towns? It's hard to fit him right there. Some players can share the paint, but you're going to have Towns on that elbow a lot more. And it's just very hard to predict on a game in, game out basis unless you think that Towns is going to have a big game offensively. If I'm going with one of those 2 PRs, I'm probably going with Rudy Gobert there. Just seems like it'll be easier. And Bismack Biyombo not quick enough to be able to guard him in the post. It's just going to be a matchup nightmare ultimately. So that's something that you definitely have to look at. And actually, for the value video on fantasyalarm.com, this is going to be a very interesting test. He was cheap enough to hit the value video. Cam Johnson tonight. Now, you're thinking, okay, he's going after Karl Anthony Towns, who has a huge size advantage on him. Karl Anthony Towns isn't that quick. He's not a good defender on the ball. So as long as Cam Johnson is moving around, has a little bit of a quicker release in his shot tonight, he's someone that should be able to get more opportunities and more shots with 8 and out. They need someone in their front court to produce, and he's going to be taking a few threes. I'm expecting Cam Johnson to be taking double-digit shot attempts tonight here, Ronan. That's why I put him in the value video, because I know that when looking at it on paper, it's a little bit of a mismatch being how tall Towns is, but Towns is a horrible defender. We've been talking about that for years.
Yeah, and it's a good matchup here. They're going to need his scoring a little bit with 8 and out, and we saw him have one of his better games last time out. Got off to a kind of a slow start this year. Was a little banged up. But, yeah, Minnesota, they do give up some three-point attempts, so that is good for Cam Johnson.
Can I sell you on a Kyle Lowry prop? It's low. It's 11.5 points. And this is someone in, 5 of 6 has been able to go over that. It's against the Warriors. I mean, in this matchup, which I'm really looking forward to, the pace is going to be a lot quicker than the Heat are used to. And because of that, I'm feeling like, and also you have to couple that with the Warriors defense against guards, nothing to write home about. Kyle Lowry, I'm trusting, can play 30 to 33 minutes in this game, take double-digit shots. I'm thinking that he's going over this 11.5 points. I saw it recently that it was a little juiced up the odds, so maybe it's better as a parlay leg, but I'm seeing that 11.5, man, and I'm all over it, and normally I wouldn't go near Kyle Lowry props.
He played Golden State last Thursday, had 12 points, 4 of 10 from the field, 2 of 8 from three-point range. He got to the free throw line twice. So, I don't know, maybe his rebounds assist prop might be better here.
He's been helping out in that regard too. I mean, he's been helping out on the boards a
Or
little
maybe
bit.
you know what might be better is point and assist.
Right.
It's, I think it's 17.5.
I mean,
might
look,
be better.
like Lowry, if he could take that, if he should be once again in that 8 to 12 shot range. I said this during the video too. It's Golden State. They'll have more possessions. He's going to be able to get to the basket a little bit on Curry. I'm pretty confident in this one. Lowry over
Points and
11.
assists 17.5. The last few games he's had 20, 20, 23. Then he had a 9 against Toronto where he was 1 of 8, then 23, 23. So he's gone over that pretty easily in 5 of the last 6 games. He's averaging 5.3 assists and 12.4 points. So, yeah, the minutes should be there. They lost to Golden State on the road last week. That game was close though most of the way, and kind of Golden State pulled away late. And in that game, he had 12 points, 5 rebounds, 8 assists.
Kyle Lowry, good spot tonight. I also have him in the value video as well here. With only 4 games, you only have so many other options you could go to. It's funny, Rome, because I was thinking of putting Man from the Thunder in the video, assuming Giddey was out, but then I would have had 3 Thunder players in the video. So I had to pivot and look there and see, okay, who in this value video, because we're trying to keep the prices down for the value video, who can I trust here? And I'm feeling like Kyle Lowry's in a good spot. I mean, you just mentioned reliable with the assist too. So I'm liking, man, that's probably a better prop to go with, the points and assists over the props then, or over the points prop.
Yeah, I think either one should work.
Then you've got the Nets and the Bulls in that situation, fresh off the Steve Nash firing here. And when it comes to this game, the only thing that we've got to really focus on is just how much Kevin Durant will there be in this game. I mean, he should be able to take out, who's it going to be on him? I guess Patrick Williams. They'll switch DeMar DeRozan on him. He's a little bit of a tougher defender in the lane, so Durant's going to be ready to fire away from downtown a little bit more. No Seth Curry still in this game. Someone who I nearly put in the value video, and Rick mentioned him before, one of the former Jazz players, Royce O'Neal. Very, very cheap. He gets the minutes, but if you notice in his last couple of games, the shots have been down a little bit, and that's what kind of scared me off of him. But that's someone that
there's no Curry, no Simmons.
Right. So, I mean, do you think that will directly impact him? I mean, he could have, you know what? Royce O'Neal, I don't know if you realize this about him, he could bring up the ball as well.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he does that a little bit too, and that helps out the production. I thought about it, man, and then I shied away from putting him in the value video.
Well, he's not a bad player. I mean, and he plays a lot of minutes. He's averaging 37.4 minutes per game.
He's their best defender, as far as I'm concerned. That front court defense has been a joke. His mid-court defense, it's better than what you're going to get from most on this team. So that's someone that's always going to log a lot of playing time, Royce O'Neal. Maybe I should have put him next time. Trust me, I'll be on a lot more of these value videos here. The Nets favored by 1.5, 232.5 there. It's 1.5 for the Heat. The Warriors, 225.5, 216.5. Thunder favored by 3 against the Magic. And then the Timberwolves against the Suns, -3.5. The Suns are favored over Minnesota. The more we talk about this, I just don't know how Gobert and Towns don't crush the Suns front court tonight.
Unless they get blown out. I know the line's only 4. Suns have been good, but it is a primetime game. I mean, look, they're in a good spot, but what if the Suns just blow them out? That would be the concern.
Yeah, that would be a little bit of a concern. I'm wondering, even in a blowout, how much Rudy Gobert would play. The guy's just been a rebounding machine, but will it translate long-term? Unsure about that when it comes to this Minnesota Timberwolves.
I mean, they just lost by 9 to the Spurs. They've lost to the Spurs twice.
They probably want to suck for Wembanyama too. Get more height on that team. It's weird, man.
I mean, Gobert cost me a win last week in our league because he needed one more point to get a double-double. 9 points, 12 rebounds. I mean, come on, man. You can't get a double-double against the Spurs?
Dude, this guy, that's the one thing.
Even Edwards has not looked great either.
No, it makes me wonder with that. And it's funny. You know who's got, and James Grande actually was talking about this too from fantasyalarm.com. Noel's got like the highest usage percentage on this team, or at least did a few days ago.
Yeah, he only played 10 minutes in the last game, but in that 10 minutes, he took 8 shots.
There you go. Usage right there for him. I found that very interesting, though. But yeah, I don't know what the deal is with Edwards, man. I mean, does he not have the lane anymore because of Towns' immense size? Is he unable to attack when you've got 2 monster guys in the middle like that? They should be able to clear stuff up from him. And I hope that he's not going to start resorting to just being at the arc and being a 3-point shooter the entire time or taking long mid-range shots from the elbow, man. This guy's got attacking skills. We both loved him last year, and I'm hoping that the acquisition of what they did with Gobert, I'm hoping that doesn't impact him negatively.
A prop that we didn't talk about that we probably should, Steph Curry, over 26.5 points.
Yeah.
He's averaging 31. He's only not hit this once, and that was against Phoenix where they got blown out. He played 30 minutes. He had 21. Every other game, he scored at least 31. He just scored 33 against Miami last week. I mean, if you think this game's going to be close, how does Curry not go over that number?
I don't know. I think that's a very nice bet. I think, again, both guards here on the points bets, I think, are very much in play tonight. Fast-paced game, too. That's the other thing that you like.
Oh, wait, it's in Miami, though. You think Curry was out drinking with his wife last night?
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so. What do you think?
It
He
might have
doesn't
been
strike
out.
me as someone who parties, Steph Curry.
He does on the low, man.
You think
He
so?
does. Oh, yeah.
He just doesn't strike me as that person. He just seems very laser focused, very routine oriented. I don't know. I can't see him getting caught up in that. What about someone like Draymond Green? Do you see him getting caught up in that?
Yeah, I think he's out partying.
Yes.
I don't know. It's tough to know. You never know.
Who would you rather party with? Draymond Green or Steph Curry?
Dre.
You would? You think it'd be just a more fun time?
Yeah.
It's just, it would probably be a more entertaining time with Draymond Green. You'd be sitting there, he'd be trash talking half the league the entire time.
I bet you he's not like that off the court. I think that's his persona on the court, and that's what I've heard too.
That he's just like a nice guy.
It's just, no, I don't know, nice guy, but when you're in the heat of the moment and you're competing, some people become like that. So I understand.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Draymond Green is someone who, look, and everybody, and you could go after Draymond Green for the dirty plays and the nut shots and everything like that. But there are plenty of players that do that. I just think because Draymond Green has been one of the players who's been very vocal, I think sometimes when you're that vocal, the attention gets drawn on you, even if you do something so small. Because how many times have you seen the camera zoning on him? And especially now after this whole drama with the Jordan Poole punch and everything, I just feel like he's just going to be looked at negatively because of that. But
he was before it. That just makes it even worse now. Everyone's I'm not surprised. Typical Draymond. So that did not help his case at all.
But it's funny because if you think that Michael Jordan, when he punched Steve Kerr, if that was caught on tape, do you think Jordan would be looked at as negatively as Green is now?
Probably not, because people just kiss Jordan's ass no matter what he does.
They do it. Shaq too. This was mentioned in the 30 for 30. Shaquille O'Neal actually punched Scott Skiles in practice right in the face, injured his jaw. Nothing came of that. Very interesting sports now compared to the 90s. We thank our producers, AB, Adam Bernard. We thank the People's Board of Jared Morris, Adam Rodas. I'm Justin Fensterman, Rick Campbell. Coming up next, Garrett Wilson autographed helmet. Retweet the pin post at Bettor Network. Good luck. Let's win.